But thank you for the beautiful introduction. I hope I can live up to those expectations.
Oh,
Ladies, I'm really, this is very informal. I don't have a formal presentation. I really just like to talk and really give you the answers that you want. And so if you at any point have a question, please stop me because I could talk. I'm a typical Latina. I could keep talking and not stop. So please just let me know what it is that you want to know more about, but I will tell you a little bit about my story. I'm an actual native from Denver. I grew up in West Denver. I went to West High School. During the times that I went to West High School, I actually grew up a block away from West High School, so I walked to school there. I am the youngest of four children. I have two older sisters, a brother, and then it's me. My parents are from Jalisco, Mexico. They, like a lot of our families, migrated here to the United States. My father was an actual migrant worker with my grandfather when he was about 16 years old. He would come up seasonally to California and they would pick fruit and then they would go back to Mexico and grow their crops in Jalisco. My grandfather sold corn for a living, and that's how he was able to raise his 14 children. So my father is the oldest male of 14 children from Jalisco, Mexico. So I grew up in a household where I didn't know any English. In fact, I learned English when I started going to school. That's how I learned and what I can learn from my siblings. Basically, I went to Catholic school in elementary school because the neighborhood we grew up with was a very poor, um, gang involved neighborhood, and my mother felt that that was the best for our safety. My parents couldn't afford tuition for four children, so my father did a lot of the side jobs at the church so that they can pay for tuition. I then went to public school. I went to Baker Middle School right off of 6th and Eladi, right a few blocks away from West, and from there I went to West High School. After I graduated from West High School, I um, decided that I really wanted to get involved in criminal justice because my brother got into a lot of trouble when he was a kid, and it was a system that we knew nothing about. And I was constantly going with my mother to bail my brother out of jail and go to court hearings. And my mother didn't understand anything. And I was having to translate things that I didn't understand myself about. So I really was passionate about helping, my Latino community. And I decided that I wanted to major in criminal justice and I wanted to go to law school. My goal was to become an immigration attorney. And I will tell you that in the criminal justice field, sometimes um, your journey takes you to a different path that you might just love and that you might stay in. Having a criminal justice degree is like an umbrella that can open many different avenues for you. And I tell you that because during my career path, as I was attending classes at Metro, I started becoming really passionate about criminal law and how juvenile law worked. I knew that I wanted to work with the Latino community. I really wanted to work with high risk youth at that time. And so I majored in criminal justice and I had two minors. I minored in at risk youth and I minored in Spanish because I thought it was going to be an easy minor for me. And I tested out of a lot of classes, but it was really hard. But I still stuck to it and I finished it. So being bilingual, especially in the criminal justice field, is a huge plus. So I will tell you that I started to get myself I started getting jobs in the criminal justice field just while I was in college. And while you're a college student, a lot of doors open up for you. So I was a paralegal at the Attorney General's office because I wanted to learn kind of what that legal life was like. I learned a lot about licensing. I learned a lot about the administrative procedure and what the Attorney General does. And so I did that while I was in college, and then I transferred over to the state court administrator's office. And there I was just an admin assistant. I was a secretary for the state court administrator's office where we did a lot of surveys across the state. I would help put conferences together. I learned a lot about what judges did. I learned a lot about what probation was. And I did a project with one of the managers where we were having to translate an assessment that we use today across the state, and I helped translate it in Spanish. And when I graduated in 1999, I was offered a position in Jefferson County as a drug and alcohol evaluator, which was basically a probation officer supervising DUIs. So I did that for 2 years. And again, with a criminal justice degree, you can do a lot of different things. So I started doing probation, and then I decided that I wanted to, hi Erica, thank you for joining. I wanted to do more with the community, and I really wanted to work more with families and get more involved with high-risk youth. So I left probation at that time, and I went to go work with the Division of Human Services, and I did child protection intake. And I investigated child abuse investigations. And with my criminal justice degree, I was able to apply for human services as well. I did that for about 6 years. And then I decided to go back to probation. During that time, I decided I was thinking about going back to law school, but I had 2 young children, and having children and being married will never and should never stop you from moving forward with your career. So I decided not to go to law school, and I started to love being a probation officer. And so I work for Jefferson County Probation. I've been here for about 16 years now. I've supervised domestic violence offenders. I've supervised high-risk adults, and now I supervise only high-risk females. And I really love that population. I work a lot with the women, and we help them get them sober, because what probation is, for those that don't know, is really what the court wants you to do is they want you to be good members of society. So they want you to get the help that you need so that you can move on and be a productive member. Now, there's a difference between probation and parole. Probation is for people that are not have gone to prison. They've maybe done some jail time, but parole is for people that are coming out of prison. And so that supervision is a little bit more intense. They have different guidelines that they have to abide by. And so do we. We're bounded by the court, and we are officers of the court. So my job is, when somebody is not doing well, we take them back to court, and I relay the information to the court. Probation officers in Colorado do not carry guns, but we do carry badges, and we do, when we're out in the community and we're doing home visits, we do wear bulletproof vests, and I can show that to you if you guys would like to see that. Parole officers wear vests, and they do carry guns because they're dealing with people coming out of prison that are more high risk. I also will tell you that when I graduated college, I was thinking of becoming an FBI agent. And after you have a criminal justice degree, you can apply for the FBI, and there is a test for that. I took the test. It was very, very heavy math. There was a very heavy math foundation, so I would encourage you that if you want to become an FBI agent, that you really look into what the test requirements are, because it does have a lot of math there, but it is something that I would definitely encourage you to do. I also had applied for the Drug Enforcement Agency, and I was actually offered a position after going through an intensive interview process, and they really do want Latinas, and they want bilingual females and males, but they did want to relocate me, and at that time I wasn't prepared to do that, and I did turn down that position. They did want to send me to a border town to become more of a border patrol drug enforcement agent. So that was very fascinating. So there's a lot of things that throughout your career in the criminal justice field that are going to take you to different avenues, and you will decide what's going to be best for you. But I will definitely encourage you, if you want to become a CSI person, if you want to get into forensics, law enforcement is the way to go, and you will need a criminal justice degree. I also went back to college and got my master's in 2006, and I got a master's in forensic psychology. And so my specialty is in forensics and criminal profiling. And although I still work for probation, what my master's program would give me is I could work like in a prison system and evaluate really high profile criminals and assess them and provide information to the court. There's a lot that I can do with that. If I wanted to become a clinical forensic therapist, that would be a different track that I would need to take. I would have to do more of a clinical track and do some hours and then get a license for a clinical therapist. But my forensic master's program enables me to work more in the high profiling of individuals and make those assessments for courts or evaluations. I can continue talking a lot about criminal justice. I will tell you that Colorado has a lot of amazing schools that has specialties in criminal justice. Metro has one of the greatest criminal justice programs across the state. We have CU as well. If you want to go to law school, CU has a law school program. DU also has a great criminal justice program, and they have a law school program. I will tell you that I did take the LSAT, which is the test to get you into law school, several times. But what happened at the time was they weren't allowing individuals to be law students and work full time. And I didn't have the privilege of not being able to work. So that's when I decided to get my master's instead of probation. I couldn't not work and have 2 children at home. And so it was okay. I accepted that path, and I love what I do now. I will tell you that it's very humbling to know that people can change. And I sometimes meet with women that are addicted to heroin and methamphetamines, and they've lost everything. They've lost their children, they've lost their home, they've lost their family, and people do get their life back together. And I always tell my clients that, you know, I don't make $1 million working in the criminal justice field, but I do this because I love it, and I go to work every day knowing that I can make a difference. And when you're in criminal justice, it is a humanitarian position where you're working with individuals. And so you really have to come to that person and be humble and be respectful and really guide them in the way that they need to be guided so that they can get the help that they need. I feel like I've talked a lot. It's 8 o'clock right now. I want to answer any of your guys' questions. If you guys have any questions regarding anything in the criminal justice field, I encourage you that if you want to look into what probation is about, I would be more than happy to have you shadow me for a day. We can go to court. I can explain to you what other probation officers do. So here in Jefferson County, we have over 100 probation officers, and we supervise sex offenders, we supervise domestic violence offenders, we supervise drug offenses, we supervise mental health, we have a mental health court, we have a juvenile probation department. We have a lot of specialized departments to really address the needs of each individual. Ladies and gentlemen, any questions? So I would definitely, if you would like to become an FBI agent, that's a great question. You would definitely want to get a degree in criminal justice.
Wait,
and when you're talking about behavior analysis.
Sorry, can you, if they sent you a personal question, we can't see it. Can you repeat? Can you?
Oh, absolutely. Erica is asking, if you want to become an FBI agent for a behavioral analysis unit, what would you recommend doing?
Oh, okay.
So I would definitely, Colorado has FBI offices here. In fact, I'm really big on human trafficking, and I work a lot with FBI agents here in Colorado as well, because a lot of my women have been human trafficked. And so I would definitely, a degree in psychology, criminal justice would definitely coincide with FBI. And again, after you would graduate, you would have to take an FBI test. And then you could always apply for the federal government. Again, I would encourage you that if you want to get into the FBI, that you do an internship with one of our FBI offices here in Colorado, so that you can see how that works. Typically, when you apply for the FBI, you will go through a series of psychological testing, and then they send you to what's called an academy, like a police academy, and that's in the state of Virginia. And then from there, they will assign you based on districts. So it's based on regions. So it's based on certain states. And I can definitely get you connected with an FBI agent here in Colorado if you want to do some sort of an internship or if you would like to interview them. Great question.
And yet, come on, you guys have more questions? Maybe ask something about a particular instance she's been in, maybe a danger, maybe something that was more tragic, maybe something that she remembers and she can probably offer some advice in. By the way, Lorena, if it's okay, I just put your information in the chat so the students, if they have it. Last time we had a couple students reach out, which I thought was really great. We sure do hope you girls reach out as well.
Yes, please do. That's absolutely okay. Absolutely. And if I don't have the answer to something, I will connect you to somebody that does. And so, Erica, the woman that I know that works for the FBI, she works in the Special Victims Unit, and she is very active in human trafficking. And depending on exactly what it is that you want to do, I can get you connected with her, and you can maybe go have coffee with her or go meet with her at her office. I'm sure that she can connect you with somebody else in the FBI as well if you'd like to ask some questions. So we attend, I've attended some FBI training as well. See, because with probation, you're working with a lot of law enforcement agencies. You're working with police departments. You're working with investigators. You're working with the Attorney General's office in some cases where they're really high profile cases. And so you really start connecting with a lot of different agencies. And so it's always really, really good to get connected with kind of your field so that you can sometimes even get a job in the mailroom. It's just really getting your foot in the door. Kimberly has a question. What is something meaningful about your job? And then Erica had another question and said that she would love that and thank you for your lead in choosing this career path. What led you to choosing this career path? And I'll answer that question in just 1 second, Erica. But one thing that's really meaningful to me is that I will tell you that in the 16 years that I have been a probation officer is that the way you treat people, people will always come back and look for you and find you. And I have a gal that just called me a few days ago, and I was her probation officer like 6 years ago. And she just wanted to call me and thank me and to tell me that even though she was mad at me a lot of the times, that she knew that I always cared and that she knew that I always had her best interest. And I really did advocate for her. And it really, she has her kids back, she has her career back, and she is drug-free and crime-free, and she's really, she's a peer coach now, and she's actually helping other addicts in her community to try to let them know that people can change and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to addiction. Other thing that's very meaningful, like I work with female offenders and we really get to know their children and they, start establishing a relationship with us and they always want to come see us and see Miss Lorena and come and we love on them and hug them because we are a positive influence for them. They don't have anybody else. And so I always buy them gifts or toys or whatever. And, seeing their families and seeing that progression and seeing them change is to me the most rewarding thing ever. What led me, Erica, you had asked me about what led me into my career path is I really grew up in a very drug infested neighborhood. And I saw a lot of my friends get killed and shot at. My brother was in a lot of trouble and I was constantly helping to help my mom getting him in and out of jail. And I really wanted to learn more about the system and wanted to find what justice was because I saw so many kids going through the juvenile justice system that was so awful. Parents didn't know what the kids were pleading to. Kids were pleading to sex offenses that didn't do anything because they wanted to get out of jail. They were underrepresented. And so I really felt that it was something that I really wanted to know more about so that I could advocate more for my Latino community. Jasmine asked, has COVID impacted my job? Yes, it definitely has. We are actually doing a lot of our probation meetings virtual. So for a lot of our clients that are really struggling with mental health and substance abuse issues, it's really difficult to have that human connection with their probation officer, even their treatment providers. So we're having a lot of trouble right now with our clients using drugs and not having a lot of success with them getting rehabilitated. The resources are very, very limited right now. A lot of residential treatment programs are not taking new patients in because of COVID. And so we're really, really having to advocate and trying to get our clients into residential treatments that will take our programs, our clients into their programs. We're having a huge issue right now with fentanyl. It's on the streets, a lot of overdoses. So we're having a lot of people, we're losing a lot of people because of COVID. It's scary for them as well. They don't want to go places, but they're living in motels and they're prostituting. And so COVID is a big, big issue right now all across the board. So as a probation officer, I am actually seeing clients in the office. I'll show you what I'm wearing. I wear this, and I have a mask that I wear as well, because it's really important that we keep ourselves safe as well. We have shields. We're not seeing anybody in our offices right now. We're seeing people in conference rooms with shields. We're having to disinfect the whole area with bleach and Lysol. So we're having to take different measures right now. So it's a really, really hard time for everybody. And it's scary for everybody. And we have people that are homeless in motels, and that's not the safest for COVID either. And so we're trying to provide as many resources as possible. Kimberly had another question. Do all your 4 years at college at Metro, or did you transfer from another school? No, I went directly into Metro because I knew exactly what I wanted to get into. I knew from the very beginning that criminal justice was going to be my career path. And so I knew that Metro had one of the best programs in the state of Colorado in criminal justice, and they surely did. They really, really did prepare me. I did a lot of night classes. I did a lot of day classes. I worked full-time also, and it was all doable. I found myself as a freshman taking 2 general study classes and 2 criminal justice classes because I was so fascinated by it. And so I really, really loved all my professors at Metro, and I really enjoyed all the classes there as well. I got my master's from Regis, and Regis was an amazing school too. And so I did, all my professors there had doctorate degrees in criminal justice. They were very knowledgeable. They were very helpful. I was able to create my master's program the way I wanted to. They had a specialized forensic criminal justice program, and I specialized a lot in forensic interviewing with children. I, I, I also did a lot of research in sex offenders and domestic violence offenders and their criminal profile and thinking. Serial killers was a lot of what I wanted to learn a lot about as well. And child sex abuse, which was one of my dissertations, which was one of my specialties as well. Because when I worked for Human Services, I did a lot of forensic interviews on children that had been sexually abused. And so that is actually one of my other passions, is working with kids still. And so I wanted to tell you another story that was meaningful. I happened to be at a restaurant a few weeks ago, and a gal came up to me and she said, "You look really familiar." And I said, "Really?" And so she told me, she goes, "Do you remember me?" And first name was Randy. And she said, "I really remember you, and I thank you." She goes, "And I'm doing very well now." And so I had to come back to my office and think about who this Randy was. And she's actually on probation now. And I was talking to her probation officer. And she said, "Yeah," she said, "my client Randy said she saw you the other day at a restaurant." And I asked her how she remembered you. And she remembered me when I was a caseworker because I picked her up from Mount View Detention Center and she was pregnant. And she was really struggling at that time. She was only 15 years old. And I took her and I bought her some McDonald's before I took her to her program. And she said that she remembered me because I bought her McDonald's and that I was really nice to her. And so the little things that you do with somebody, go such a long, long way. I will tell you that I was putting gas at 7-Eleven one day, and this gentleman comes up to me, and he was one of my previous clients. And I don't call them offenders because I feel like everybody is a human being. And he came up to me and he said, "You changed my life. And had you not been there for me and pushed me through my sobriety, I would have never been where I'm at today." And he now chairs AA meetings. He does sober socials. He has a sober baseball team. He has his own children, and him and I connect every year or so. He gives me a call and sends me an email and says, "Hey, I just want to let you know that this is my day of sobriety, and I remember you every day of my life." And so I want you to know that in any type of job like this, whether it's social work or criminal justice, you make an impact for people. And they remember you. And there's going to be some that don't like you, and they're going to be upset. But in the long run, they know that you did it for their own good. Because probation can be a punitive situation as well, and you are making recommendations to the court. And some people go to prison, and some people go to jail. But a lot of the times, it's because they're not ready to change, and they're not ready to not change their criminal thinking. And a lot of times, they have to be at that place. Any other questions? Erica had a question where it said, what was the most dangerous situation you were in? So I will tell you that when I worked for Human Services and I did child abuse investigations, Human Services does not want social services. And I mean, people do not want social services in their life. And so I had to remove some children from a home, and that was a very dangerous situation. There were guns in the home, and we had to call law enforcement. The woman had a teenager barricaded in a bedroom with her perpetrator, and she was not allowing us to have any direct contact with this teenager, and I was really, really worried for her safety. And so I had to have Wheat Ridge Police Department assist me. She had dogs in the home. The dogs were pit bulls. She would not allow us in the home, so animal control had to come in. She then attempted to assault the officers and fell over and hit her head and knocked herself out, so we had to get an ambulance there. And then the officers had to address the perpetrator who was sexually assaulted. And so that was one of the most dangerous situations that I was in, because there was so many dynamics involved. We had a teenager barricaded in a room with the perpetrator. We had dogs involved. We had guns in the house. And we had a woman who was actually under the influence of some heavy drugs. And my job was to assess the situation and get that child out of there as soon as possible. There was another situation where we do home visits, and we had a very mentally ill individual who was very, very paranoid and didn't want us in his home. And we have certain protocols as probation officers. When we go into homes, we always go in pairs, and we have radios, so we contact law enforcement that we're going into a home so they know exactly where we're at if there's a safety situation. And he became very irate really quickly. And so as a probation officer, your job is also you have a lot of training, and you have to de-escalate clients. So at that time, me and my partner, who was another female, we had to really de-escalate the situation and really try to talk him down, and really, because he tried to close the door behind us. And so we knew then that it was a red zone situation, that we needed to get out of that home. But in order to do that, we needed to use our verbal skills. And a lot of it was de-escalating that client so that he felt safe, so that he didn't feel like we were a threat. And then later address the situation afterwards. So then we were able to get out of the house, and we contacted law enforcement, and then they came and assessed him, and he was placed on a mental health hold, which means he was then taken to the hospital. But he was also under the influence of drugs. So we never know what type of situation we're going into. We have to go through an academy as well, just like police officers. And so we are trained to restrain clients. We don't carry handcuffs, but we can restrain clients and detain them until law enforcement gets them as well. So every day could be a dangerous situation. You just always have to be prepared and not freeze up.
Those are all really great questions, Lorena. I think maybe they don't really realize how much court time you do. Can you talk about that?
Yes, definitely. So when you're I'm trying like to get away from the sunlight in my office. Again, when somebody is sentenced to, for example, a 2-year probationary period for maybe possession of a controlled substance. So my job is to supervise them. My job is to make sure that they get the help that they need. If they have a drug addiction, if they have a mental health addiction, we do a lot of assessments. We have to we have to assess their criminogenic needs, which means what's the immediate concern? Is it substance abuse? Is it homelessness? Is it mental health? Is it trauma? What's going on in this individual's life? And they have to abide by certain guidelines. So there are what we call terms and conditions of probation. And so a lot of it is that, you can't get into any more trouble. You can't use drugs and alcohol. You have to get into treatment if your probation officer requires you to do that. And so a lot of times when we have clients that are getting more cases, getting into more trouble, putting the community at risk, or they're not motivated to get help, not motivated to go into treatment or do any UAs, urine screens, we have to bring those cases back to court. So that means I have to write a report to the court, and what's that? It's called a complaint. It's a revocation of probation. And sometimes we issue warrants, and the judge signs on the warrants, and then the clients get detained. And we have to go to court and relay that information to the court. Remember, in Colorado, probation officers are officers of the court. So we go to court and we explain to the court the efforts that we have made on this specific individual. And sometimes my job is to make sure that not only my client is safe, but that the community is safe as well. So in a few minutes, I have a court hearing at 9 o'clock. And you can always, court hearings are public hearings. Right now, they're all virtual. I will be present in person at this court hearing. So if you guys ever want to observe any court hearings, you can go sit in a courtroom or chime in on a virtual hearing. I'll send the link to Yvette if you guys want to chime in into some court hearings just to observe. Sometimes the court will ask you who you are, and you could just say you're just observing, and that's fine. All court hearings are public records, are public hearings. And so today my hearing is about a woman who this is her 3rd DUI. She's using methamphetamines and alcohol. She's really not moving forward with any of the recommendations in the efforts that I'm putting forth for her. I'm paying for her treatment. I'm paying for her UAs. I'm really trying to support her. I'm trying to assess her mental health. And she's just deciding that she doesn't want to do any of that. And so we're going to court today on that. I have to express to the court what our efforts have been. And so we really, really try hard to get them the support that they need and the help that they need prior to going to court. And a lot of times the court will give them another opportunity on probation. Maybe they'll set it over for a few months to see how they do. And sometimes the court will say, you know what, you've been given many opportunities, and I cannot risk you hurting somebody on the street and getting another driving under the influence offense. So sometimes they'll do a jail sentence. And again, it's got to be where the client is at. If the client is not motivated to get any better or ready for treatment, then there's not a lot we can do as probation. But believe me, we try everything. I call resources. I pay for treatment. I give them bus passes. We give them gift cards as incentives because when they're doing well, we want to praise them for doing well. So we give gift cards. I give little journals. We give calendars. We do a lot of things in our program so that we can really give incentives to our clients. So we give them a little reward. But we spend a lot of time in court. We also testify. I will be testifying at a termination hearing next Friday, which is a woman who I supervised that was very dangerous, who is currently now in prison, who has 9 children, and the court is terminating her rights on her 2 youngest children, and I have to testify on her progress on probation. So we do testify in a lot of hearings. We testify in probation hearings, we testify in social services hearings, we testify in other criminal proceedings. Like if they disclose anything to me on a crime that they committed, I have to testify because I am an officer of the court that they admitted to me that they did that crime. So we are in court a lot. We work a lot with district attorneys. We work a lot with private attorneys. We work a lot with private defendants, with private attorneys as well. Again, and we work a lot with law enforcement. So having a criminal justice degree, you can do so many things. You can work with the DA's office. You can work with the public defender's office. You can be an investigator with a law firm. There's so many things you could do.
Awesome. Question. I bet not only do you have a lot of people who love and adore you and cherish you, but also a lot of probably people who are not your biggest fans. How do you deal with that?
You deal with that on an everyday basis. It's very important to be self-aware of your surroundings. So anytime I go to a restaurant or I'm in a public gathering, I always know where I'm at and I know who's around me. My children know that if we have a specific safety code word, that if I say this code word, it's time to drop everything and leave the store or leave where we're at and no questions asked. This is something that I have trained my children since they were very little because I worked with human services as well. You know, there's times that we have to call law enforcement for our safety. I've had threats against me and we file police reports. But again, you know, if there is a situation where I see a client in public that is not very fond of me, I have to be able to handle that situation. And we're trained to, again, to de-escalate clients. But my number one priority in the community is to keep my children safe. And so with that being said, I don't order pizza under my name. I don't ever give my home address at a store. My Facebook is very private. My social media is very limited because if somebody really wanted to find me, they can. I have cameras in my home. And, you know, it just depends on the situation. It just depends on the client when you have that high alert time. So you definitely, this is a field where, like, again, like Yvette said, there's going to be people that really respect you. And then there's going to be people that get out of prison and they're angry with you. And so a lot of times I notify the Department of Corrections. If somebody's released from custody, then I'd be notified immediately because then I need to know that I need to be more self-aware during that time.
Oh, thank you. Before we're out of time, if you guys have any more questions, you can send them our way. Or if you think of something later, you can email her, email me, and then Lorena's fantastic about getting back to you guys. But I have one more question. What do you do about self-care for yourself and your family? That's a lot of heavy stuff that you deal
Yes.
with. There's a lot of heavy burdens. And even just listening to you, like, I'm on the verge of tears because it is very, as even as educators, I feel like we're kind of on the same path of serving others and helping students, and whether they want help, they'll take it. If they don't, they won't. Sometimes you make them angry, sometimes they love you, and sometimes they don't see the light until later. So, I mean, I think it's somewhat kind of, as far as like serving others, it could be a very similar and emotional path. What do you do for self-care?
You have to learn how to just kind of disconnect when you get home. So there's a lot of things, you know, dealing with the high risk females that I do supervise. You know, I hear their stories and they're so traumatic. And some of the women lose their babies. Some of their women have babies that have fatalities, which their babies die. Some of them where children are hurt. And you know, in this field, you have to learn how to absolutely take care of yourself. We do a lot of vicarious trauma trainings, which means that, you know, you're going to go home sometimes and you're just going to feel that pain, and it's okay to cry because you're only human. You know, you feel their pain. It's okay to really, the way that I take care of myself is I really talk to my colleagues. We have to take care of each other, my coworkers. We have to talk about the bad situations, those horrible stories that we hear. A lot of times we have to be supportive with our clients and really advocate for them in many different arenas, with law enforcement, with human services. We have to talk about the good as well. I don't go home and talk about my cases with my husband. I don't go home and talk about my cases with my children because I need to be able to disconnect that when I get home. And that's the way that I take care of myself. And I know that a lot of officers do the same thing. And you have to find a way to just, if you have a really bad case, really talk, communicating with your supervisor and say, you know what, I just need a mental health day for myself tomorrow. And it's okay to be sad and it's okay to feel. Because I also am a firm believer that if you don't do that, there's going to be high burnout and you're not going to be able to do this job for very long. And so I see it all the time. I see caseworkers, officers, probation officers that just don't care anymore and they're not able to feel, and then we're doing more harm than good. Remember, we're dealing with people's lives here. We're dealing with people's careers, their children, their livelihood, their families. And so my advice to you is, if you're going to get into a humanitarian position like this, is that you always care. And when you can't care anymore, it's time to move on. We have a lot of officers here that say, you know what, I'm just going to go and work in real estate because that's happy, or I'm going to open up a flower shop, because a lot of what we do is very heavy on our heart. And so we definitely have to take care of ourselves. We definitely have to be able to talk to somebody about it. I've had cases when I worked for Human Services where I investigated really, really sad things that I needed to go and talk to a therapist about, because I was having some nightmares. I was having some feelings and emotions about that, and I needed to take care of me. So just know that in this field, there's always going to be resources for you to take care of yourself. And they're going to provide a lot of training on vicarious trauma. And there's going to be a lot of support. So know that there are going to be some really hard days. And there's going to be some great days as well.
Oh, I know you have to get going. You have court, but I like just all sad and tearing up, and it is definitely a heart career. And I'm glad that you still have a heart for it, because you're right. When we deal with certain probation officers and lawyers, and sometimes you just know that they're just kind of frozen, right? And they're like robots. Sure. They're just kind of doing their job. So it's nice to know that you still have the heart for it. Girls, any other questions right now that you have? I put Lorena's information. If you want that Zoom link, do you have that Zoom link for your court appearance right now, Lorena?
Yes, I can send it to you.
Can you
Absolutely.
put it here in the chat? Is it easy enough for you to do that, or do you have to get going?
Let me see. And you'll hear a lot of court hearings that day because it's in Division D. He is Judge Carpenter is our court. He's our judge, and she is a very, very fair and strict judge. So I love her because she is very honest and ethical, and she holds people accountable. So a lot of people think she's very mean, but I feel like she's very stern. I will send you the link for Division E. In fact, I want to send you this whole email because Yvette, I'll put the link for Division E right now.
Okay. Girls, would you be interested in joining if you can? I know if you might have class at 9, but if you want to join, I think this is a really interesting way of learning. It's probably the best way of learning, and just listening. And really, you guys are at the point where you're navigating your career path, right? And you're not going to know right away, and it'll take various directions throughout your life. But this is, as if you guys can jump in right away and start listening, start understanding, you do an internship, shadow, and then you'll start navigating through the system and have a better pathway when you get to college. That way you're not wasting a lot of time figuring it out. But like Lorena said, having a criminal justice degree is really great because it gives you an umbrella. It's kind of like having a communications degree or a business degree. You
sure.
get a lot of
absolutely
pathways, or a health degree. So honestly, this is a good route. So if this is something that interests you, if something seems a little too harsh and too heavy, there are different other ways there are different other careers in the same pathway. So yeah, the better it is. Okay, did you guys get this? You'll see the link, and it starts at 9, and we'll let Lorena go because she's 2 minutes over, and I know she has to get there in person. So
Yes, I got to run, but I will tell you that one of the being in criminal justice, like here, women dominate probation. We have we're probably like 70% officers here that are women. And so, when I started in criminal justice, it was a very male dominated career. But being a Latina and being bilingual, always know that we always have to be more represented. We have to be more prepared because being a minority, we always have to make sure that we're always held at a higher standard. And so the best advice that was given to me by one of my very dear friends who's an African-American woman, she's a Black woman. She said, you know what? We're of color. So we always have to talk better. We always have to dress better. And we always have to be prepared better. And so really, in reality, that's the way this life is going right now. And so that's my piece of advice to you, is always be prepared, always stand up for what you believe in, because that's what's going to give you the respect in any field that you're in. And believe me, I've gotten in a lot of trouble because I continue to stand up for what I believe in. And I stand by it because I am true to that. And I will always advocate for when it's right and it's just and it's fair. And so that's, why there's good officers. That's why there's good probation officers. That's why there's good police officers. That's why there's good judges, because they stand up for dignity. And in this field, you will see that there's a lot of corruption in every way that you go. And so as long as you stay positive and you stay true to that, you will always do the right thing.
Yay. Thank you so much. And Carol, thank you. Have a good day. And if
yes, please.
Recording, I'll send it to you, but I'll be
thank
sharing
you.
It. And I sent you an email to follow up to reschedule something else too, because I don't know what happened with the Zoom link, and that was wonky and totally my fault. But
no worries.
All right.
No worries. Totally okay. Get a hold of me, gals, if you guys have any questions.
Bye.
Bye-bye.